Okay, let's start here. What does Trump teach us this week? You guys remember what happened right after Shabbos? What was your biggest surprise after Shabbos? I love checking the news after Shabbos. Sometimes it's real big stuff happening. Like you're disconnected for. Well, I disconnect even earlier in the day. I'm not on the computer. Once I sign off this thing Thursday night, I'm not going to check my email until sometime Sunday afternoon. So that's good. And news, I check the news at breakfast time on Friday. Okay, for see me, I sit down. I have 5 minutes to eat my omelet and check the news before Shabbos, and then I'm out until sometime after Shabbos. I'll also see did anything happen. My parents sending me messages, what's going on, and that whole coup in Venezuela was kind of funny to read about. You know, but what does it teach us? Well, yeah. What was the joke? The American military does whatever it wants. Might makes right. There are people around the world. It's just a risk game, right? Remember Risk, the board game? Trick is to take as much territory and as resources from the others and treat it like a zero sum game, and eventually backstab even your closest allies. Okay, so when you have the current emperor of China, and the current Soviet dictator of Russia, and the emperor of the United States doing what they do, it's all a power game. They don't follow any rules. It's my rule. He who has the gold rules. Law of the jungle, and that's what it always was. And international law is a joke. Who obeys international law? Who makes any pretense to actually want to keep international law? Who's enforcing international law? Do you know how many casualties the Venezuelans suffered on Shabbos? The Americans blew up a lot of people. They ain't do nothing. Whatever. No one cares. Might makes right. Yet here's the silly thing. You have well-meaning, smart, educated, observant Jews. We've discussed them before. Okay, like Rabbi Blau, who are completely misguided when they express more allegiance and I guess subservience, right, to international law than halacha. That's what he said. He wrote this. Well, nowadays we have international law. We've got an agreement with the Goyim, like that supersedes halacha. Dude, what if it openly contradicts halacha? Secondly, none of the Goyim even keep that. It was just a joke. They only mention international law when they're trying to harm you, when it's against you. You don't keep international. And they libel you. You do keep international law, and they're the ones violating it. They're saying you're the ones who are not keeping international law, and you feel that you have to keep international law. I heard it last week also from someone who should know better because he's smart and he's in contact with rabbis. He could have been a big rabbi himself, a Talmud of Rabbi Tzuriel, and he said this. International law. Well, nowadays we have to keep international law. Who said such a thing? Why don't you try keeping the Torah first? Right? Another bad idea. In these psukim from certain rabbis, starting from the mid 20th century, you actually have the consideration of international law is such blah blah blah. What about the halacha? By the way, I thought international law was the mitzvahs b'nei Noach, and Chazal did have international law. The Nevi'im did preach to the Goyim. The only international law I recognize, and that should be recognized, is that given by the Torah, not by a bunch of European homosexuals and other lowlives. So there you go. Well,
how about because I'll talk about Darkei Shalom.
Yeah.
About bending a little bit. How much
Darkei Shalom. Darkei Shalom. What does that mean? It means for neighborly relations. We live among Gentiles who are decent. Okay. First of all, if you're stuck in Chutz La'aretz, you can't hope that everybody's an actual Ben Noach, but at least the ones who aren't trying to kill you. The Tanaim recognize people like that in Bavel, right? Some even don't even observe, worship idols, right? Some are decent. So Darkei Shalom means you help them out. You want to get along well with them, and that's actually good. And most Gentile folk who have Jewish neighbors and live among Jews or Jewish neighborhoods adjacent to Jews realize that's beneficial for them. Darkei Shalom, or for the Ger Toshav. We do things for him. We visit their sick. We comfort their dead. We do Achnasas Kala, to comfort their mourners when they're mourning the dead, right? We bury the dead, and we do that. That's Darkei Shalom. Darkei Shalom does not mean that if we are at war with genocidal entities, genocidal national entities against Am Yisrael, that we should even consider perhaps treating them according to now some artificial standard. Okay, there's no Darkei Shalom at war. You treat the enemy; they're the enemy. There's no Darkei Shalom doesn't come. If there was Darkei Shalom, they wouldn't be making war with you to begin with, right? Yeah, it's on its head. If you have war with someone, you have to treat it like that. So that's why I thought it was the joke. Why do these people care so much about international law? It makes no sense. I think it's a projection. Okay? It's just a projection. They want to do it. They grew up reading the New York Times and watching too much CNN, so they would want to hope that, look, I could be just like them. We're more refined. I said there was a slippery slope that people were talking about Rav Kook's ideas about we're improving morally, and eventually Sanhedrin will say that was for then, and this will be now. When Rav Kook said that, he meant Nevi'im and a future Sanhedrin would reconsider ideas in the Torah and have new drushes and perhaps, I don't know, tell us that, yes, slavery should never come back. Something like that. I can entertain that. But it doesn't mean that because you've been watching too much MSNBC that eventually eventually the sages of the future will say, you know what, we can allow two men to marry each other. It doesn't work that way. Or that now we should keep international law. Just because you read some Rav Kook, it doesn't mean Rav Kook and a future Sanhedrin or a future Nevi'im will matir all the Isurim with which you have become enamored.
If there's international law, it doesn't go over any of Avera. It doesn't tell you not to do a mitzvah set. Would it be better for the Jews to follow it or just ignore it?
Well, I don't know. For that, you first have to have an actual international agreement. Like I said, international law is a joke. No one's keeping international laws. That's the first thing. Is there even such a thing? The most of human history, they never had such a thing. You know why? Because unfortunately, when international relations, unless two countries have actually made a deal with each other, they've entered into some socioeconomic bind, which usually is the case, mutual benefit, Solomonic type relations with the Gentiles, right? Then they're at war with each other, and they're killing each other. So they can't say, well, we're going to all play by the rules. It was a joke throughout history. That's the problem with any system. Here's something that the founding fathers realized. Founding fathers wanted to run a country. They said we had rights as Englishmen. We should have certain rights and representation and all these other ideas and ideals that developed over a few centuries of Western thought, Western liberal thought, right? Yet they engaged in war. Why did they suddenly decide, okay, now it's time for bloodshed? And the answer is, the system, let's say democratic, we're all going to play by the rules, and the losers will agree to go along with the majority, etc. That works when we all have so much in common that it way overpowers any political disagreement we might have. We're all similar in culture, we're similar in religion, we speak the same language, we share a lot of interests, we live among each other, right? So once upon a time, just because there's an ocean between the mother country and the colonies, so what? We share a lot of things in common and we work together. But the second that the system breaks down and one side is there to oppress the other and to use force against the other and to, extort the other, so the system breaks down. Now it doesn't work. That's basically what they realized. So too, we could have any system. Jews usually, thank God it works out. Jews can have peace among themselves. They could work together so we could resolve our differences. We could talk things out. We could vote. We could decide things. But the second you say that the other side's your enemy and I'm going to do everything against them, that system doesn't work. You can't have a vote. You can't have rules. If one side doesn't agree that there even are rules, we're not playing a game. And so, happened to my son. He likes playing Monopoly. You ever notice that? You bring someone to the house, Monopoly. That's his test. Okay? Whether it's another the fifth grade boy or, one of my daughter's, friends from high school. Okay? He doesn't distinguish. It's like, there's someone else in the house. We're going to play Monopoly. He even did it to me. Monopoly, right? I played Monopoly for the first time in almost 3 decades the other Motzi Shabbos because, I was the guy around, so I have to play Monopoly with him. And I taught that kid a lesson. I crushed him. Okay? Teach him that within an hour, I'm not gonna play games. He's gonna learn Monopoly the hard way. Okay, so and also learn to beat his friends now. Thank God. But seriously, that's what he does. Everybody has to play Monopoly. But you know what happened? There was one kid who was there just like cheating. Okay, the games don't work if one side doesn't recognize the rules and is not there at least to assume that we're playing this game. So this international law, I don't know who's refereeing, but I do know that it's unfortunate for us Jews that in most of these conflicts, the other side has no pretense of even trying to keep some sort of rules, right? So why should we play by any of their nonsense rules. We're not here to play Monopoly. They're trying to kill us. Okay.
There's
Well,
some sort of international law that the vast majority of goyim agree exists for moral reasons. And it's not related to warfare, like
moral? Who decides what's moral?
just like general majority consensus. They decided this is what morality is.
Okay. Majority decides.
So, let's say there's some sort of food that gives people like cancer if they eat it for too long or whatever. The goyim decided to ban it, but most of the goyim don't actually keep it because they're goyim. But the Jews decide to keep it, and so what's it called? Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't know, but I don't think we should be taking our cues from them. That's why we have the Torah. You know, we shouldn't go looking far and wide for let's look for new ideas about morality or ethics, or look, if it's health, they can prove it. They find that there's a chemical that you shouldn't be eating. Well, yeah, most chemicals you shouldn't be eating. I think we discussed this earlier. You know, every time they try to come up with something artificial to replace that which exists, turns out the real thing was always good. And someone added the example: breast milk. It turns out for children, the best thing is to nurse up until a certain age, because I'll assume to 24 months. Like, who doesn't do that? And if Chas v'Shalom, the child doesn't have a mother around, so what they used to do, there were professional women who were always nursing all the time, so they'd stay nursing so they could sell their services, right? Wet nurse. And then they came up with formula. Now, babies have grown up entirely on formula, and they grow up to be perfectly fine adults. You know why? Because God's watching after them, and it's good enough. But it's not a replacement. It would have been much better if they hadn't been just drinking formula, right? So that's something. Yeah, eventually maybe they'll find out what harm it caused. They're missing a lot of their antibodies, and they don't develop proper immunity. It leads to all sorts of things that you wish didn't happen. Just do what God intended.